Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Please delete as applicable because the internet is worldwide and time zones are a thing. And big welcome to the screen. Well, screen? No, stream. Welcome to the stream. Anybody that's coming over from Sansom and the Amigos News, really pleased to have you here. Anybody that's not from that, if you enjoy this content, you're probably going to enjoy their content. So from 8 o'clock, find Sansom Communion, and if you want a good roundup of the news, that's where you're going to get it. And now I'm going to do a couple of hellos. Sansom himself, what about you, chum? Glad to have you here. Billy Blogs, no, not yet. Oh, and could I also get a wee audio check, please? Hansick, evening, brother, what about you? Hope everything's going well. Anglo-Saxon, hello, brother, glad to have you here. Yes, there's a couple of things I need to say. A couple of things I need to say. I'm actually amazed that people keep turning up here at 11:30. Sorry, 1 second. Just mute myself and clear my throat. Where were we? All good. Hopefully that is about the audio. David Davies, pleased to have you here. Linda Hunter, hello from down under. Hope all's well with you. Yes. What was I going to say? Yes, a couple of things I'm going to get in front ahead of. First one. There's going to be a slight change to the format of the show. Not the content, just the format. What I have been doing is bringing us in and showing you some crazy sports and cunning stunts by people. That's still going to feature, but it's going to be after the main content. From now going forward, whatever's on the thumbnail is going to be the first subject that we'll cover, because as Strontium Dog was pointed out last week, that he came in to the thumbnail, he was waiting on learning about that topic, and he was getting bombarded with crazy sports, so that's what we're moving to. Second and third thing I will cover together. Martin W., welcome. Pleased to have you here. Yes, tonight's subject, remembering the Battle of the Somme. 1st of July 1916 was the bloodiest day in British military history. The amount of people that we lost, killed, severely wounded, plane missing, taken prisoner, was off the charts. That does not reflect on the soldiers. That reflects on the way we tried to fight the war. But I am well aware that there were, as well as the 36th Ulster Division, there was a hell of a lot of English, Scottish, Welsh. There was Canadians, there was Australians, there was New Zealanders, there was Commonwealth people. There was even 2 divisions that were raised in the Republic of Ireland. And I am going to get to well, not everybody, because that's impossible in one stream, but I am going to get to the wider details of that battle. And I'm going to have Rory Herbert coming on to talk about his grandfather and his Somme battle with the King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry. So we are going to get to that. But the beginning of this stream is going to be Ulster centric. I just want to check through the comments here. 1 second. Right, these are chatting away to each other. That's all good. There's nothing to really need to address. And I think I have said hello to everybody that's made themselves known in the chat. If I haven't, just type in hello and I will get you. Indeed. There was a lot of cannon fodder, and I'm going to also later on compare it to the casualty lists for D-Day, which we have all heard a hell of a lot about, and we've watched Saving Private Ryan. And if you're an old hellion like me, you've started off with watching The Longest Day and know about how bloody that was. And whenever you compare and contrast the casualty figures from the Somme to D-Day, it's very, very stark. Now, the other thing is, what I talk about on this channel are cultures, traditions, typically British ones, and a bit of history thrown in. In Northern Ireland, we have if we're still doing this next June, I'd like to have you on to talk about that. Talking to a relative whose granddad survived the Somme today, only to commit suicide 6 months later. Shocking, Pete. Yes, that is very tragic, and I'm sure it happened quite a lot. Nobody really wanted to go back to war again, but they had to. They were forced to. Hope you're making something nice. Right. Yes, in Northern Ireland, we have a tradition. We have parades every 1st of July to commemorate the Somme. They are primarily conducted by the Orange Order and cities, towns, villages across Northern Ireland. There are parades. There's another group of people that run parades called the Somme Association, who not only have parades, but they would have remembrance service acts. Generally speaking, most of the Orange Order parades will involve laying a wreath at some form of war memorial along the route. And in Northern Ireland, we have lots of war memorials, so it's not hard to find one. 1 second. Just want to see what Billy Blogs is saying here. Inquisitive Billy. Right. Why should Republicans and the NI fight against unionists in the UK when the Republic of Ireland seem interested in replacing them with Muslim Africans? 42. Because you'll find that if you scratch underneath the Republicans, you'll find that they're Marxists, and the common people have been laid down a river. That's pretty much what's behind that. But to get back to it, where was I? Yes, so we have this long tradition of parades, which sometimes become contentious. And our first video clip is actually one of mine. This is getting off to a stunning start. I've lost the link. Just give me 1 second, people, and I will get this up and running. Here we go. This is a poem that I have written about why the parades happen. And right, hold on. We're nearly premature there. I'm never like that. Back to StreamYards. Here we go. Share screen. Chrome tab. Just check this is up. It is, but we need to do theatre mode. Why We March by 42. To those that ask or question why we march on this first day of July with fife and drum and sash and banner and follow a route in predictable manner. Why we play those tunes that proclaim yesteryear or believe the reason is because we are here. Ponder ye this as you watch the sunset. We march so others will never forget the band of brothers that left us for Isle and went to war with a cheer and a smile. The deeds they done to preserve liberty, so the people of Ulster would always be free. They fought with a bravery second to none, and a bayonet charge that cannot be outdone. As their blood drained in a faraway field, so we march with a pride that cannot be concealed. So no longer dare to question why we march on this first day of July. That's Hello, Packet. Glad to have you here, Sean. That's what our sort of parades look like. Well, at least some of them anyway. And I'm going to go into the formation of the 36 Ulster Division, how that came about, and why we have this well, it's a debt that we have to these men. Thanks, Sanson. Thank you very much. So we're going to get into this is going to begin with the Home Rule Bill and how or why Ireland is the way it is, why the United Kingdom is the way it is, and we have United Kingdom of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and not the rest of it. Yeah. With a lot of people here, yeah, Sanson, sorry to hear. It's right. Hopefully, we're doing all of our grandfathers a bit of proud and doing things right here. I hope. Anyway. Cookies. Just want to zoom this in a little bit. Yard. Share screen. This comes from RTE, which actually did a better job of describing what happened with Home Rule in a unbiased fashion, better than the BBC did. That I am glad to hear. I am glad to hear that, Sanson. Right. I'm going to zoom that in a little bit more. This will begin to make sense. Home Rule is the reason why the 36th Ulster Division was formed. So I'm going to go through this whole thing. And it might also explain why we commemorate what those men did in the way that we do. What was Home Rule? Home Rule was a demand that the governance of Ireland be returned from Westminster to a domestic parliament in Ireland. Ireland had had its own parliament up to 1800 when the Act of Union ended Irish representation in the Parliament at College Green, Dublin. Under the Union, MPs elected for Irish constituencies went over to Westminster and sat alongside the English, Scottish, and Welsh MPs in a legislature that had jurisdiction over the whole of both islands, as well as the colonies of the British Empire. So, in other words, Ireland was treated the exact same way as everywhere else. They elected their MPs, they went to the Parliament, and the Parliament as a whole established the laws of the land. When was the Home Rule movement established? The idea of Home Rule dates to 1870, but it should be viewed as part of a longer tradition which aimed at revising the Anglo-Irish relationship by constitutional methods. The first attempt to repeal the Act of Union was made by Daniel O'Connell in the 1840s. This was ultimately a failure, and Irish politics in the mid-19th century was dominated by MPs acting as Irish representatives of the Liberal and Tory parties. In 1870, Isaac Butt, a barrister and former Tory MP, founded the Irish Home Government Association. The movement combined a powerful cross-section of progressive landowners, tenants' rights activists, and supporters and sympathisers of the Fenian uprising of 1867 to create a third way in Irish politics. In 1874, styled as a Home Rule League, Butt's nascent party succeeded in gaining a loose allegiance of 59 out of 103 Irish MPs. Right, just going to check the comments. Right, that's okay. I was just checking in case there was anything I really needed to. This will all make sense about why I'm going about this way, by the way. I hope anyway. The most significant event occurred in the emergence of a more powerful Home Rule movement was in the 1880s when Charles Stewart Parnell was elected chairman of the party. Parnell was a master organiser. He ran the party like a machine from parish level to Parliament, and by coupling the demand for Home Rule with the intensifying agitation for tenants' rights in Ireland, Home Rule became an extremely powerful force in politics. Between the land question and the demand for Home Rule, Irish issues consumed a large portion of parliamentary time at Westminster during the 1880s and intermittently thereafter. Did the Home Rule movement achieve anything? On 3 occasions, a Home Rule Bill was introduced to the House of Commons. In 1886, Prime Minister William E. Gladstone introduced the first Home Rule Bill. However, this move split his governing Liberal Party, and the bill was defeated in the House of Commons. In 1893, a second Home Rule Bill managed to pass through the House of Commons, but it was thrown out by the House of Lords. Once more, in 1912, the Home Rule Bill passed the House of Commons. The powers in the House of Lords had been curtailed in 1911, and under new parliamentary mechanisms, the Lords could only delay rather than reject the bill. At the beginning of 1913, the Liberal Lord Craw, former Lord Lieutenant of Ireland, opened the debates on the bill in the Lords. The rejection of the Home Rule Bill by the Lords was a fait accompli, but with only the power of delay remaining to them, the real danger to the passage of the bill came from outside Parliament, where Unionist Ulster was organising in its earnest to resist the imposition of the bill in the northeast. So I'm going to take this one out. So what you have what you have there is there's a bill coming in that is going to hand the ruling of all of Ireland to government in the Republic of Ireland, and the Unionists were very not pleased with this state of affairs. They weren't going to take it at all. So what did they do? Get the next link up. View. Zoom in. Zoom in. Back to StreamYard and add this link. Right. Share screen. Share screen. Right. This is from History World, History of Northern Ireland. Ulster Volunteers and Irish Volunteers, 1911 and 1914. Check it. No, I want to zoom this a little more. Just checking what it's taking on the screen. Yep, we're happy with that. View. We'll do less. Ulster Volunteers and Irish Volunteers, 1911 1914. Ulster, the most Protestant religion of Ireland since the 17th century, is where the union with Britain had its most passionate supporters. And from 1910, the Unionist members of the Parliament gave a brilliant and ruthless leader in the person of Edward Carson. In September 1911, when it was known that Home Rule Bill was in the pipeline, but 6 months before it was placed before the Parliament, Carson gave warning of what is to come. And when he addressed a crowd of over 50,000 Orange men and Unionists outside Belfast, those Orange men are the Orange Order organisation that still hold the parades every 1st of July, or in the first week of July, depending on which district you're in. He tells them that the morning after Home Rule is granted in Ireland, they must be ready to administer and defend their own province of Ulster. He didn't say Protestant province of Ulster. There's a better. This is good, but there's still a bit of revisionism. It was a nationalist leader that said it was a Protestant province for Protestant people. That winter, Ulster was full of Protestants drilling. A license to drill can be acquired from any justice of the peace as long as the intention is to defend the United Kingdom's constitution. So what these people did was they got the licenses and said, we're preparing to defend the constitution. And they were involved in drilling and marching. In the following spring, Carson, without his side and new leader of the Conservative Party, Andrew Bourlaw, reviews another gathering of Ulster volunteers outside Belfast. It shows every sign of being a military parade. 100,000 men marched in column past a saluting base above which flies a gigantic Union Jack. The event is held on the 9th of April 1912, 2 days before Asquith's Home Rule Bill is presented to the House of Commons. The final gesture of Unionist solidarity during 1912 is the Solemn League of Covenant, a document in the militant Scottish tradition, which is signed from September 18th in Belfast Town Hall. Hundreds of yards of desks enable more than 500 people to sign simultaneously. Eventually, almost 500,000 men and women do so, committing themselves to disobey any future Home Rule government. In 2012, there was a re-signing of the Ulster Covenant, and very large numbers of people turned up to sign that. And whenever we did that, it was not a reenactment. We knew what we were signing and why we were signing it. Finally, in January 1913, with the Home Rule Bill now making its way through the House of Commons, the Unionists take an openly military stance. They decide to raise an Ulster volunteer force of 100,000 men, aged between 17 and 65. Dummy wooden rifles now appear in the drill parades held at the Orange Halls. These developments prompt a similar response on the national side. In November 1913, a body calling itself the Irish National Volunteers is formed in Dublin and begins its own programme of recruitment and drilling. 6 months later, it claims 100,000 members. By now, the wooden rifles have given way to real ones. In April 1914, Carson's organisation succeeds in landing at Larne more than 24,000 rifles and 3 million rounds of ammunition purchased from Germany. In July, a much smaller shipment of arms, also from Germany, comes ashore in Howth for the Irish Volunteers, resulting on this occasion to a clash with the military on the Dublin Quay and several civilian casualties. The prospect of civil disorder is made worse by evidence that the British government will be powerless to cope with it. There is much discussion whether the British Army should be ordered to quell the Protestant resistance in Ulster, and if so, whether the orders would be obeyed. In 1914, a commanding officer foolishly asked a cavalry regiment stationed on the Curragh at Dublin whether they would accept such an order or prefer to be dismissed from the army. The officers reply they would choose dismissal. The so-called Curragh mutiny suggests that little can prevent the Orangemen from wrecking Home Rule, but greater issues postpone the crisis. 2 days after the contraband weapons are landed in Dublin for the Irish Volunteers, Austria declares war on Serbia. 1 second, I'm just going to take a drink. The immediate effect of Britain's entry into World War I on the 4th of August 1914 is two-edged. On the surface, it diffuses the recent tensions over independence, but there's a mutiny in Ireland which refuses to postpone the struggle. The new crisis has the effect of driving their activities underground. In Westminster, the leader of the Home Rule faction, John Raymond, immediately suggested the Irish and Ulster volunteers should collaborate in defending Ireland's coasts, enabling British troops to be withdrawn for the war effort. In subsequent weeks, he goes further, urging Ireland's gallant young men to play a full role in Britain's effort in defence of the highest principles of religion and morality and right. In making those patriotic comments, Raymond knows that the onset of the war has delivered him a prize of home rule for most of Ireland, and he has agreed with Asquith that a Home Rule Act will be passed, excluding, for that moment at least, Ulster. This is the important bit: Home Rule excluding Ulster. An accompanying act will at the same time delay implementation for a year or until the end of the war, whichever is the shorter. Both acts receive royal assent on September 18th, though only after Carson and the entire Conservative opposition have walked out of the chamber in the House of Commons in protest. Yeah, we've got a lot of bullet holes up here in Belfast, mate. I'm just checking through the comments here. All of them are. Yes, there's a lot of Ulster Scots here. Sorry, just checking through the. Right. Okay, so where we're at is because the Ulster Volunteer Force was formed, and then agreed to go to France. They did that on the back of the promise that Ulster would remain British. And instead of the Irish or the British or whoever, the Germans, it turned out to be the people that we ended up fighting. So that's the story of how my grandfather ended up in the war. No, there was bullet holes and bombs up here at that time as well, and very shortly after it. Yep. So that's how my grandfather came to be enlisted and eventually on the front line on the 1st of July for the Somme. Now, at this stage, I'm going to bring Rory in, and he's going to talk about his grandfather, and then we're going to flip back and forward, and we're going to talk about the actual battle. But what I wanted to get clear was the background to all of this, and I'm going to get this taken away. Rory, you ready, chum?
Yep, go ahead.
Excellent. First off, welcome to the stream. Thank you very much for coming on. You have sent me quite a few pictures and whatnot, so whenever you want one of them put up, just let me know and I'll get it fired up in the screenshot.
Well, thank you so much for welcoming me on. I think, was it Sensom's stream where I mentioned a comment about my grandfather and you replied?
Yeah, I think it was, but over over a few streams and then over emails, we've been sort of talking back and forward because it turned out that your grandfather was wounded on the same day as my grandfather, and they were approximately 2 miles apart.
That's that's correct. Yeah, mine was in the 8th Battalion, Own Yorkshire Light Infantry,
Yes.
which was the attack on Orville, I think. Have you got the map that you had, that color map? I mean, that gives kind of the overall positioning.
Yes, the color one for most of the Somme, or pretty much all of it. Yeah, right.
That would be good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get that one now.
Because that goes to show sort of, where all the divisions are located, particular your one, which the Ulster Division. And so my grandfather was only 2 miles south of that in the 8th Division.
Right, I think it's this one, total Somme front. I have called it. Right, and I will get this out of the stream now. Sure.
I mean, I think we're talking what, 7 miles of the total front on the first day of the Somme. And obviously, that's an awful lot less than the total front, but I think it was about that.
No. And I'm going to also make a
That's the one.
Right, yeah. And then I can move this about to the relative places.
Yeah, so if you go into 36 Ulsters down the bottom at the moment.
Yes, 36 Ulster is here.
Right, so that's where your grandfather was.
Yeah, that's where he was.
Right, against on the attack on Thiepval.
Yeah,
and mine was in the 8th. So
right, yes,
on the attack on Overlair. Or Overlier, I think it might be.
Yes. Relatively close.
Well, I think it's only 2 miles from Thiepval to Overlier. So, depending on exactly where they were positioned.
I think I might have a slightly... Right. I was looking at these maps for ours. I have a black and white one, I think, which has less of all these lines and stuff. But it does give the 2 places, I believe. But anyway, we'll work with this for the moment. So that's where your grandfather was down here?
Yeah, it's just to give an overview of, the whole situation and how close our respective grandfathers were from one another. The other thing was, I think I sent you one that goes a little bit into more detail on where my grandfather was. That might be worth looking at, unless you want to throw up that black and white one.
I'll get the other one you sent, because I liked your maps. They were quite good, and I just need to pull it up. They were.
The one about that one is that it actually sort of gives the French positions and all the battalions.
I've got that now. I'm about to bring it down. Bring it up. Sorry. Sure. Share screen. What?
As I was saying, I mean, what's interesting about that particular one is it just shows. Obviously, you had all your Ulster regiments in one division, but when you look at that and maybe zoom in a little bit,
I'm gonna get that zoomed up now.
And you look at who's there, and you've got up the top there 8th Yorkshire Lancs.
Hold on,
and then that's it, and then below that's my 8th Own Yorkshire Light Infantry, or 8 Coily.
You've another
Then you got
Yorks and Links beside that.
second links. I mean, you've got all these people very close, from the same rough area of the country
Yeah,
in the same area. I mean, it changes a bit down the bottom with the Devons and the West Yorks.
yeah,
But I just thought that might give people an
yeah.
overview of what it was all about, well, and who was there.
But not only do you have the Pals regiments, where peoples from smallish geographic locations would totally fill a regiment, and then that regiment goes out and gets wiped out due to incompetence by the leadership, not by their own fault, and that decimates that town. But because you've got uh, regiments from close together, you're decimating a whole area.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah, very, a lot of widows, in certain
Yes,
towns.
yeah. Uh, I know that where I currently live, there was like half the street would have their curtains come the 18th. Uh, half the houses in any given street would have their blinds drawn, and that was the obvious sign that they had got the telegram to notify them that their son, husband, brother, father, whatever, wasn't coming home.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we haven't really discussed the casualty numbers, but I believe it
Yeah,
was, I mean, well, it was just over 19,000 killed, and I think 57,000 roughly wounded just on one
well,
day.
yeah. Well, there's the other thing. Uh, they still don't. They still have. We're over 100 years later, and we still don't have accurate figures. It's still estimated.
Well, yes, because I mean, they're still finding bodies.
Yeah,
I mean, even a few years ago, I remember they found a couple of bodies from my old regiment, and they went over to France, gave them the full military funeral, reburied them. You know, we still look after them though.
yeah. It says a lot. So, where you?
Well, I was wondering, if you could move on. I sent you the actual orders that
Yes,
my grandfather received on the first day of the Somme, and I thought that
yes,
might be an interesting read.
yes. I will get those up now. Finder. Now, there's two. I
Yeah,
take
it's
it
two.
that
Yeah,
I take it number one's the first one.
that's correct. Yeah. The
Right,
one is it's type
right,
8th Coily Operation Order
right.
number 37. I couldn't do it in one thing for some
No,
reason.
no, that's okay. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure I put up the right one first.
But
That's it. And
I
I'll
think it
soon.
gives you an interesting situation. There we go.
Yes.
So if I may read
Yeah.
that out. The battalion will assault the German trenches from a frontage of about 300 yards from assembly places as before detailed between Longbridge Street and SAP2 north of Bamber Bridge Street. This is quite something I found interesting. They named the trenches by street names.
Ah, right. Because whenever I was reading that, I was like, "What?" I was trying to figure that out, but that's the actual names of the trenches.
Yeah, they actually gave them the street
Right.
names. I guess so. Well, I don't know. Maybe to make it
Hmm.
feel a little bit more homely, but also so you
Yeah.
go to Longridge Street or go to
Yeah.
this street, you know?
Yeah. Rather than trench one, trench two, trench whatever. That
Yeah,
makes sense. Uh, oh, on an interesting flip of that, uh, about 2 mile up the road from me is Feefle Avenue, Bapoon
Really?
Drive, Somme Drive. Yeah.
Right. Oh, wow.
Our ex-servicemen's houses all got named after places in the war.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yep.
That's good to hear. Anyway, so to carry
Yep.
on, the 2nd Battalion Lincoln Regiment, 25th Infantry Brigade on its right, and the 8th Battalion Yorkshire Lanks on its left. The assault will take place on Zulu Day at 0 hour. I'm not going to read through the objectives because
Right.
they don't mean anything unless you've got a map. In fact,
No.
they don't even make sense of coordinates to me, but never mind, we'll carry on. Number 2,
Yeah.
distribution. Here we go. Each company is allocated a frontage of about 80 yards and will attack on a platoon frontage in 4 waves. The order of the companies being from the right, A, B, C, and D. Well, that makes sense. Bombers, Lewis gunners, and signalers are shown in appendices A, B, and C. The advance is covered and assisted by 70th Brigade, Machine Gun Company, and 5-3, whatever that is. 4 guns, 70th Brigade, LT Mortar Battery Company, Battalion. Now, if we can move on to the next one, because this is where it gets rather interesting, because it's not what we get from the mainstream media. Let me just say that.
It is not. Right. Just take me a second to get this on the shirt. Window. Right, I should be up now. I'm going to do a bit of zooming in.
So, it's entitled General Principles of the Attack. Before the 0 hour, officers commanding companies will move their 2 leading waves to a position about 200 yards from the German trench, at a distance of 50 to 100 yards between the 2 waves. This position will be previously selected, and each platoon frontage will be marked by stones, sandbags, or other means. The 2 rear waves of each company will be in our own front trench. Completion of this move to be reported to battalion headquarters 10 minutes before 0 hour. So what that is saying,
10 minutes before 0 hour is
the completion of the move will be reported.
Yep. 7:20 is 10 minutes before 0 hour, and that's whenever the bombardment stopped.
0 hour was 7:30.
Yep.
But
the bombardment.
Sorry. What they're saying in these orders is that they actually assembled in no man's land, I reckon about 30 minutes, because it would take them time to do it, but definitely 10 minutes before 0 hour. So, I mean, I know this is only one particular set of orders, but it does make you think that the old adage of, the officer blows his whistle and then the men go over the top with him on the first day of the Somme is not exactly correct. I mean, certainly not in this instance, because they were forming up in no man's land prior to the attack.
Yep. What I do know is in the 36 Ulster area, they were coming out of Feefle Wood, and they had got to within 100 yards of the German lines before 20 past, and pretty much went then, which is how they got their success. But they had a wood to creep out of. It looks like your grandfather's mob were just in the open.
Well, they were originally stationed just in front of O'Teal Wood, but obviously the trenches were in front of that.
Yeah.
So, yes, they were coming out of the trenches into no man's land prior to 0 hour.
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong?
I'm not sure quite where I got to there.
Yep.
Oh, here we go. 0 hour. Yeah, that was the first objective, wasn't it? So
Yep.
at 0 hour, at 0 hour, the first two waves of each company will advance. The third and fourth waves similarly moving out from our frontline trench at a distance of about 50 yards from one another. The assault will be carried out over the open. First and second waves of each company pushing on to their lines 28-20-03. I presume that's a trench, without stopping in the trench. Then 0.5, so that's 5 minutes after, third and fourth waves of each company will push on. It must be understood that the trenches will be cleared by bombing and blocking parties, specially detailed. Well, that didn't happen. For whom separate instructions are attached. And then 0:30, and this is an interesting one, at which hour the barrage lifts from the first position to be consolidated. So they didn't stop the artillery until 30 minutes. The two leading waves of each car would push the other lines, etc., etc. But yeah, I mean, that last thing, when you think about that, our artillery was still firing 30 minutes after 0 hour. Now you're talking 200 yards from when they started advancing. So I call it a conspiracy theory, but you do wonder whether there was friendly fire. I mean, I might come on to that in a little minute, because all the officers, I think there were 25 officers, all the officers in 8th Battalion Coyley were wounded within the first 3 or 5 minutes. And one has to think, hold on, whose artillery was that? I mean, yes, there was German artillery fire. We didn't take out the German artillery. That was a big failure on the first day of the Somme. We didn't take out the trenches with our artillery. We didn't take out the German artillery. But it makes you ask the question. Just let me put it that way.
Yeah, we've a quick question here. Resistant Lies have asked, did Rory say that this document belonged to his grandfather?
Yes, indeed.
Yep. Yeah. He managed to bring that back with him?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
In fact, just to carry on from that one a little bit, I mean, yeah, I was 13 when my grandfather died.
Yeah.
He'd never talk about it, just wouldn't talk about it. But as a young boy, I sneaked up into the attic of his house in Sheffield, and I discovered not only his helmet with the shrapnel wound in it, because he was wounded by a shrapnel wound, but I also found his old Webley service revolver in its original holster.
Oh,
yeah. So I know the helmet is still in the family. I can only presume the revolver was handed into the police, because obviously it was illegal under our Firearms Act.
Yeah, no, I think they'd been keeping that, claiming it was an antique and an heirloom.
I know, it's a shame. I mean, even if it was deactivated, it would be still nice to have in the family.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing that should 100% be kept within the family. In fact, yeah, deactivate it doesn't need to still work. And I believe that deactivating it, you can deactivate it in such a way that it looks the same. Do you know what I mean?
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know your firearms 42, obviously.
Yeah. I did some time in the territorials.
Well, I know we're going off topic here a bit, but
yeah.
Strange enough, you can actually buy a Webley Mark 6 air pistol these days, and it's made by Webley. Not in this country, I don't think, but it's the same weight, and it has these little shells in it that you put your air pellet in, and yeah, obviously it doesn't have the recoil, but it feels the same, I have to say.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going off topic. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. We can do a bit of tangenting, but yeah, it beggars belief about the way this whole shit show was run. Just go out and form up in no man's land. What we do know is that approximately a third of all the shells fell short, which doesn't help the whole thing. The other thing is, whenever it says about moving on to phase 2, the artillery was planned probably a week in advance. So where they were going to shell was on a timetable, not reflective of where the men were at any given time. For example, whenever the 36th got past got on the first line of trenches and were moving into the second, they got hit by the bombardment because they were 10 minutes too early.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there was no way for that to be referred back or adjusted or anything. It was like this shelling was going to happen when it was going to happen. And they had some strange belief that the soldiers would be exactly on the map where their timetable said it was going to be. I think they must have expected the Germans to, you know, assist with that, make sure everybody's where they're supposed to be, like some form of a drill, but it was far from it.
No, absolutely. No, I agree. I agree with you. I mean, yeah, I was going to talk about the battalion, if not the regiment, but certainly the battalion, absolutely denied there was no friendly fire incidents, but then they would, you know.
Yeah.
And I think I also mentioned to you that every officer was killed in the first few minutes, didn't I? So they didn't report on it. So I'll come on to that in a minute, because I don't know how much time I have left.
No, you've got as long as you need.
Are you
Honestly,
sure?
I am 100% sure. This is not something to be rushed. It's a sensitive topic. It's quite emotive. And the last thing I want you to feel is that you're being rushed through it, because you're absolutely not. And the other thing is, I love talking about this stuff, so I'm good to go for a very long time.
Well, that's very kind of you, Fortitude. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to. I have a book in front of me, and it's by Lieutenant Colonel Reginald Bond. I think it's from 1929, and it's entitled "The King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry in the Great War." I've had it a few years, but I can really go into some detail of what happened that day. Well, according to the Lieutenant Colonel, you know, on that day with my grandfather's battalion.
Oh, go for it.
Can I start? Okay, I'll start.
Yes, go for it. And I'm also very interested to hear it. So, yep, go for it, chum.
Okay. General Pulteney's Third Corps occupied a central position in a general attack, being immediately east of Albert on the line between Ouvillers and Bécourt. Of his 3 divisions, the 8th held the northern half, while the 34th held the southern. The 10th was in support. The 70th Infantry Brigade, in which was the 8th Coiley, held the left position of its battalions, with 8th Yorkshire Light Infantry was on the left and 8th Coiley in the centre, and 2nd against the right. The German guns, including the machine guns, had fatally favourable positions and were too well posted to give this division much chance of success. The story is a tragic one. The fate of our 8th Battalion is the fate that overtook the other battalions of the division with little variation. The battalion diary, which was written up immediately after the events, from all the evidence that could be collected from survivors on the spot by Captain G.L. Pyman, is of greater value than one might have expected. This is what I was saying before. All the officers who were with the battalion when it was attacked were killed or wounded in the first few minutes, so that no officer who took part in the operations was available to give evidence of what the battalion had done. carrying on. From the 29th to 31st of June, 8th Corps occupied trenches in front of Otiel Wood, waiting to make the great attack. The great attack. Captain Poyser was temporarily in command of the battalion. At 7:27 a.m., the 1st of July, under British artillery barrage, the leading companies went over the top. Well, again, the orders don't say that, you know? So that's interesting. During the preliminary bombardment, the losses from hostile shell fire had been considerable, estimated at 10% of their numbers. The first two waves that left the trenches reached the German lines with only slight loss. Well, I don't believe that either, because he just said in his own book that all the officers were killed or wounded in the first few minutes. So that doesn't make sense. The succeeding waves lost heavily in no man's land from the machine gun fire from both flanks. And these waves must have lost probably 50% of their strength before they arrived at the German frontline trenches. So he's saying, oh no, it's the German machine gun fire. The diary is careful to record, here we go, the fact that no casualties occurred owing to the fire of our own artillery, in order to disprove any incorrect statements which might be made to the contrary. Well, why does he say that in the book? You know?
It's got cover up written all over it.
Doesn't it? Doesn't it? I mean, I think it's a fairly accurate statement. I mean, it does go on for a little bit, if I may.
Yeah.
This is the men of the battalion soon found themselves intermingled with men of the other battalions of the brigade. Well, that's because all the officers were killed or wounded. After passing over the first enemy trenches, severe fighting took place for the possession of the second or supporting line, which several times changed hands. At one time, some of the men of the battalion penetrated into the third line, but both second and third lines were under heavy fire of the machine guns. The opposition was almost wholly from machine gunners and bombers, who gave few chances to the attackers of coming to close quarters with the bayonet. And then we're moving on. Here's an hour. At about 8:30 a.m., the order to retire was being passed along. This probably originated from the enemy. I thought that was an interesting one, and created some confusion temporarily. A retirement from the right was actually in progress in conjunction with the extreme left of 25th Infantry Brigade until the troops were picked up by 9th Yorkshire Lancs, the oncoming battalion in support. They were then carried forward into the enemy's line of trenches once more. Can I carry on?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Sure.
Do you believe that they got to the third line of trenches and they decided to go back? It seems strange.
Yes, I must have to query that one. Now you brought that point up, because it's like, then that was a victory at that point, wasn't it?
Well,
so why go back? Yeah.
If they had hit the third line of trenches, they had got to the back of the German lines.
Well, that's what I was saying. That would have been a victory, wouldn't it? In that particular sector, but
yes.
No, that's dodgy. Yeah, I think that's dodgy. 42, definitely.
But the thing that makes me think that is there's a couple of quite obvious lies earlier on in this report. So why change track?
Well, I know. I mean, but I hope you enjoy me reading it out, because it is meant to be one of the greatest things about what happened that day. But it's anyway. I mean, I can carry on if you want. Just out of
carry on.
If people are interested, but I've got long to go now. I'll get through it as quickly as I can. By 10 a.m., the whole of the 70th Infantry Brigade was across no man's land, fighting the German fronts and support trenches. Communication with the headquarters division by way of no man's land had ceased, for communication was impracticable. Soon after midday, orders were issued by the division for a fresh attack, fixed by 5 p.m. Oh, we could talk about that if you want. General Haig, after so many deaths, why do you keep throwing them in there? But we're going to carry on. Let's talk about that later.
Yeah.
70th Infantry Brigade was ordering to renew its attack at the same time. By 3:30 p.m., reports regarding the situation had been received from all three brigades, etc., etc. The runners of 8th Division retired to occupy, that's the division, not the battalion, the old frontline trenches supported by 56. Here we go. All of the officers of 8th Coyley having become casualties, the men were reorganized for repeated attacks by their NCOs and by officers of the 2nd Lincolns, who operated on the right of 70th Brigade. Sometimes prominent private soldiers, this sounded good to me, took the initiative in rallying parties of men. Time after time, the survivors followed the lead of any man who assumed authority, because they had no one to lead them, and fought to recover the ground which they had temporarily lost. In the end, the objectives couldn't be held owing to tremendous losses, but it was not until 6 p.m. the last men of the town, of those who were known to have recrossed the intervening 350 yards or so of no man's land, got back to the original first line of the British trenches. It was considered established that no other men of the battalion were then alive in the German line. Here we go. Here's some casualty figures. The battalion had gone into action in the morning with 25 officers, 1 medical officer, and 659 other ranks. Of these numbers, the medical officer, he's the one who saved my grandfather, by the way, who, should I tell you, later became a doctor himself.
Yeah, I had heard only in the chat, so I haven't heard the proper full story, and I'm interested in that as well.
So where was I? Of these numbers, the medical officer and 110 other ranks reported present after the battle. Very few of the officers reached the second line of the German trenches. Well, he's just said that they were all killed or wounded within the first few minutes. So were they carrying on wounded? Interesting on that. Over the flat rising ground, the enemy machine guns acted like so many reapers, and wave after wave of men were mown down in this harvest of the manhood of the nation. Fortunate were those sections of the line to whom the conformation of the ground were offered some slight depression or fold of the ground, into which men disappeared temporarily from view. That's obvious. It's customary to attribute the failure to capture the enemy's position either to insufficient artillery preparation, well, I'd accept that, or to the inexperience of the troops of the new armies. Well, no, they've been serving there for 2 years. Anyway, but no skill to leadership or individual resourcefulness of the men could have rendered these men immune from the storm which they faced unflinchingly, or transported them alive across the beaten zone in sufficient numbers to render it possible for them to hold the positions which handfuls of them were able to reach. And then it just goes on a little bit about casualties. So, 10 officers killed, 14 wounded, 1 missing. The other ranks, 35 killed, 122 missing, 365 wounded, reached the dressing stations. And then it mentions the names of those killed, including my grandfather, actually. So anyway, there we go. Sorry, it took a little while, but I thought that was, an interesting story. Let's say whether how much of it was accurate or not, we don't know, but it gives you an idea of what that day was like, and pretty bloody horrendous. Excuse my French.
Yeah. Oh, no need to excuse that, but yes, horrendous is probably the most polite word you could use to describe it, and also chaotic, because I've yet to read anything about that day where anybody seems past 7:30, where anybody knows exactly what's going on, and with very accurate reporting. It just seems to be the norm for that. And I think there was quite a bit of people trying to put a bit of spin on it, that it went better than it did. but I would say that there's very large graveyards over there that say it didn't go very well at all.
Oh, the size of the graveyards. Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
It makes you want to cry.
Yeah. So, whenever your grandfather was wounded, was that a Blighty? Did he then come home?
Well, after he was wounded.
Or did he stay there?
No. He came back to England.
That was him back.
Yeah. I don't think he ever went back again. And I think one of the reasons for that is that the army were running out of doctors, and he was in training to be a doctor at the time when he went to war in 1914. So I think the military defense sort of went, no, we need more doctors, finish your studies and come back again. But I can't prove that one. It's just
yeah, but
a thought.
It seems sensible. If there was anybody with a tenor of what about them would go, actually, do you know what? You've done your bit. You've fought your battle. Now, here's a better way you can help us get your training done and patch boys back up again. Would make perfect sense.
Well, gosh, I'm just trying to think. It must have been 2014. I actually went to Sheffield University Medical School, had an exhibition about what they did in the First World War, and I know my great grandfather, which would be my grandfather's father-in-law. He was part of that, and the stuff that they learned, in terms of surgery from the wounded, having to operate on the wounded in World War One. Actually, there was some quite great advances in medicine at that time.
Yeah, that happens with every war. Billy Bloggs has made a bit of a comment. They put doctors on the front line. The doctors would have been in. You've got a couple of things going on. You've got medics essentially that go in with the troops. You've then got any able-bodied man will be used as a stretcher bearer to bring the boys back to a dressing station. They'll get patched up there, and then they'll move further back to a field hospital, which is where the doctors will be hanging out. However, particularly with the technologies they had available then, they wouldn't have wanted the hospitals too far away, because getting the soldiers to them while they were still alive becomes problematic the longer the distance. So there would be different levels of doctors and medical personnel at different stages, from right on the battlefield to a bit further back, and then back home in Blighty, where they would have facilities for trying to rehabilitate soldiers that had moved back through that system further back and further back, and how far back you went, how large burn, whether or not you got through back into the front line.
Just to add to the Billy Bloggs question, yes. Well, as I was saying, there was one medical officer, and yes, he was in the frontline trenches, and he rescued my grandfather and many other men from no man's land later that day.
Yeah, my grandfather was brought back to his lines on the 2nd of July. He was wounded on the 1st, on a dead stretcher. We actually thought he was dead. Whenever he was set beside the tent, a medical orderly somehow noticed that he was breathing. He must have made some sort of a noise or whatever. and they got him in and patched up, and then moved further back and managed to save him, and he ended up back in Britain and fathered by Muller, which was good, because if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here. You know, it's the medical personnel did wonders with the resources they had and the amount of people that they were having to treat, because there was a hell of a lot of casualties coming in that day. Let's see what next. Will I do a little bit about 36 Ulster's advance?
Just before you do,
No.
40.
Oh, well, I was going to do that and then bring you back in again, and we'll talk about the whole front. But no, go ahead. What else were you going to say, Rory?
No, I was just going to end on a slightly lighter note,
Right.
Especially seeing that our friend Sensum Communem is in the chat and has a go at me sometimes about the relationship with a former prime minister. I wanted to say, my interesting. It was your maternal grandfather.
Yeah, I was Muller's grandfather.
Right.
My grandfather on my father's side was
Right.
he was in the Royal Navy in World War II.
Right. Okay. Well, the grandfather. Yeah, my grandfather was my maternal grandfather, and his surname was Willie. So he became Dr. Willie. And before Sensor makes any wisecracks, no, he was not a gynecologist.
That's funny. That is funny.
Sorry, carry on.
Yep.
I don't know. Put that in.
One second, I just need to.
He'll probably tease me on that.
Yeah, but yeah, that's one you can take a bit of ribbon on. But yeah, it is good that you actually did make the recovery and done something very useful. What I was going to do now is I'm going to do a very little bit about the advance of the Ulster Volunteers. Talk about that, and then we'll talk about the front as a whole, because I've got the map for that.
Sure.
Okay. Now, what am I going to do? No, that's not the one I wanted. I'm actually just going to take this bit from while I was reading through all this stuff. What I wanted was a small, quick, pretty accurate account of their advance. I've got very detailed stuff from the Royal Irish Regiment Museum and all, but it's actually too detailed that it becomes long-winded. So I'm just going to take a snapshot out of Wikipedia, because it's accurate enough and concise enough. Get this, share screen. Share that and make this a bit bigger. Right. Right. 36 Ulster Divisions, sector of the Somme, lay astride a marshy valley of the river Acorn and the higher ground just south of the river. Their task was to cross the ridge, take the German second line near Grand Count. In their path lay not only the German front line, but just beyond it, the immediate lines within it was the La-Boiselle redoubt. This paragraph I'm skipping because it's bullshit. And back to the actual accurate stuff. Okay. On the 1st July, following the primary bombardment, the Ulstermen quickly took the German front line, but intelligence was so poor that with the rest of the division attacking under a creeping bombardment, artillery fired in front or over the men, and which advances as it moves. The Ulstermen would have come under attack from their own bombardment in the German front lines, but they still advanced and moved to the crest so rapidly that the Germans had no time to come up from their dugouts, generally 30 to 40 feet below ground, in this swashing redoubt, which was also taken so successfully. So successful was the advance that by 10 o'clock some had reached the German second line, but again they came under their own bombardment, not due to finish until 10:10. However, this successful penetration had to be given up before nightfall, as it was unmatched by those on its flanks. The Ulstermen were exposed in a narrow salient, open to attack on three sides, and were running out of ammunition and supplies. And the full German counterattack at 2200 forced them to withdraw, giving up virtually all the land they had gained. The division had suffered some 5,500 casualties and 2,169 deaths. The FIFA Memorial commemorates the 1916 Anglo-French offensive in the Somme and the men who died there, including those from the 36th Ulster Division. It is the biggest British war memorial to the missing on the Western Front, both in physical size and numbers. It commemorates more than 73,000 and was built in the late 1920s to 1930s. That's a picture of the Ulster Tower. That's a picture of the Ulster Tower at the memorial, which is a replica of Helen's Tower in Clandy Estate, where the Ulster Volunteer Force trained. If I go back to this one, I think there was something else I wanted to possibly look at. No, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to take that away. Yes. The other thing of note, Rifleman William Frederick McFadden of the 14th Battalion Royal Irish Rifles, which is also the Young Citizens Volunteer, formed out of 36th Ulster Division, died 20 years old on the 1st of July at the Battle of the Somme. He died approximately an hour before the battle started. What had happened was he was dispersing hand grenades, and whenever he was taking them out of the box, one of the pins came out, and he didn't know which grenade the pin had been dislodged from. So he threw that grenade into the box and lay on top of the box and told everyone around him to get away, and absorbed the blast, obviously killing himself, but saving a lot of his colleagues. And this picture here is a mural in the Craigie Estate of 4 members of the Ulster Volunteers that won the Victoria Cross, and this one in the top right is William McFadden. Right. That's that there, and now I'm going to try to get this off. If I just do that, there's that. Yeah, so that's basically what happened with them, and now I'm going to pull up a map of the general Somme area, if I can find it. Yeah, that one. Right. Sure. Share screen. Share screen. window. Now I'm going to mark this up again. Right. Check my stream yards. Make this a little bigger again. Right, Rory, can you see the Boston? See the big bit says British operations?
Yes.
And then
Yep.
La-Boiselle, just beside
Yep.
a little dot. Is that round about where your grandfather was?
A little bit north of that. Yeah.
Where this arrow is? Or the other side?
Well, up a bit. There was a that's below. There was a road from running from Albert, which says Bert on the left. Okay.
Yes.
And that was running up to La Rochelle. La-Boiselle was just south of that road, so he was just north of that. I mean, sort of near Pozier, but further to the front line. It doesn't actually give Ovilliers on that map, but yeah, very much that central area.
Yeah, because here is Fifelwood.
Yeah.
Right, now I'm going to reduce this down again. Oh no, hit the wrong one. Yeah. Oh, it's.
I mean, all these little places were villages, you know, or small towns. They weren't big towns.
Right. The dark black line is the Allied front line. So this, see, it runs from Beaumont Hamel. Hamel drives up the road from where I live as well. Past Fifo, La-Boiselle, Fancourt, Canary, moving on down to this where the 6th Army are.
Yeah.
The arrows are the successful Allied attacks. And if you look, they poke out millimeters, inches. A bit of success here down at Mountbatten, whatnot. Nah. The dotted line is the final Ally line on the 20th of November, where it stretches out past these 3 large arrows and out round this whole big hump.
Oh my gosh. So that's nearly 5 months later.
Right, yeah. Now, here's the thing. See these big arrows? That's where they went in with tanks.
Oh, okay. Right.
Without the tanks in this movement out to here doesn't happen. Because by the those arrows are the first Allied tank attack on the 15th of September. And you can see the difference that it makes. It's not because they had better soldiers or anything. It's not because they were better organized. They had the equipment to actually do the job. And the tanks are what got them through.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, yeah, because they overcame the trenches, didn't they? I wouldn't want to be in a tank, World War I tank myself. Thank you very much.
Oh,
but
powered by steam.
Oh,
a steam powered tank. I don't think anybody wants to be in that. You know, they were horrible beasts, but they did work. And what was the other map I was going to pull up? But you know, it's still not acres and acres of land, but it is a lot more. Nah.
Frank O'Brien was asking a question in chat. Is this the first battle with tanks then? And I was trying to think what that one was.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. There was a couple of engagements. This could have been. This would be in and around the right time for the first use of tanks, but there was another battle later on where they had the first mass use of tanks and cleared everything out. We would need to actually go and do some research on that, Frank, to be exactly right. So
yeah,
we're
but
not going to...
yeah, I just did a quick Google. Fleur Courcelette. That's what you're talking about, wasn't it? Fleur Courcelette, was that it?
I think that's the first mass tank attack. I'm not 100% sure. I think Google's normally pretty accurate with that. It's whenever you... What I found is with most of the military stuff, they're pretty accurate with the rough outline, and then whenever it gets into the why and the how and all of that, it all becomes a bit politicized.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Cambrai, I was thinking of. Yeah, Cambrai
Yep.
was famous for, yeah. But yeah, there we go. We shall discover that.
Yep. What was the other one that I was... This is the one I wanted to put up. Share screen. Share screen. Oh, had a bit of a boomer thing. This one's going to take a little longer than I thought. Right, here we go. We're now on it. Share screen. Window. And I'm going to take that. Stephen Campbell reckons we're about right. So that's good. Right, I'm going to move that to that format and do a bit of enlarging. Right. With the trying to fit, where's the key to this? Approximate frontline finally consolidated. Right. This dotted line along here is the British front line. This is the front line of Fife. There's Fife Wood there. The dotted line that you see here is that's where they started. This is where they finished up. And the scale of that is in 100 yards. So, yeah, you're probably talking about 100 yards they finally made. Now, this other dotted line, this is the positions that they held for all of the day before being forced back. So it made a big bulge out into, there's the swatching readout that they took, that was a fortified area, and they took all of that, and because they couldn't be reinforced and couldn't get ammunition and stuff, they were forced back to pretty much where they started. It's not brilliant. And the next thing I want to look at is the total casualties. Actually, we'll do a I'm going to search this up while I'm out because we're going to trust Wikipedia for the casualties. Right. What country is that's France, mate? Billy Blows was asking what country it is. It's in France. Share screen. Share screen. Right. Nah. What this is giving us for casualties is British 57,470, 19,240 dead. French 1,590. Something doesn't seem right. And the German losses are 6,300 to 12,000. Again, that's a guesstimate or an estimate. So we can say 60,000 wounded, lost, or whatever, and 20,000 dead would be pretty accurate for the British on the 1st of July. Now, if I find her. Right. Oh. This thing is better hid away than I thought. Right. Share screen. Share screen. Has that come up? It has. I'm going to enlarge that a little. These are the figures for D-Day. D-Day, June the 6th, 1944. Again, you remember seeing all the films about Saving Private Ryan, how bloody it was, and all the images of Omaha Beach and whatnot. Allies, 10,000 wounded, 2,500 dead, estimated. Axis, 4,000 to 900, or 4,000 to 9,000. No breakdown on what are dead, wounded, missing, or whatever. Which puts a bit of perspective whenever those figures for the 1st of July are 70,000 and 20,000. It brings in the perspective. Minus this out a little. And the other thing is, all were male, all were disposable. Why else would these numbers be a guess? Because see if you're having to guess at how many people have died, survived, where they are, and everything, you're really not caring too much about them. What do you think, Rory?
I think the casualty figures for the first Battle of the Somme are pretty accurate.
Yeah. Oh, I think you're accurate, but there's a massive disparity between the first day of the Somme and the D-Day, which, from everything that we've seen in recent history, was not a good day for anybody. But there's a big difference there.
Oh, clearly, I mean, nearly 20 times. I mean, yeah, just over 19,000.
Yeah.
What was that figure again for D-Day? 20,000, was it?
20,000.
2,000. Was that? 2,500, perhaps.
It was
so hey,
2,500 2,500 dead
dead, right? So we're talking
and
just
10,000.
under, yeah. So we're talking just 8-9 times the amount on the first day of the Somme
Yeah,
compared to D-Day. I mean, which is horrific, isn't it?
yeah. You know, whenever you think about how everything's all, uh, you look at Saving Private Ryan and the likes of that, and we seem to, and I think the problem is that as a country and as a peoples, we have somehow not, we've somehow forgotten how bad World War One actually was.
I was just going to make the point though. We need to compare those two figures. You also need to compare the amount of combatants or soldiers involved on the day. I mean, and I don't know the total figure for
Either.
those compared to in the first song compared to D-Day. So it's a little difficult to make a comparison, but I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at certainly if you look at the regimental losses, I mean, yeah, that didn't happen on D-Day.
No, there was no regiments, let alone battalions, that were just decimated to the point where they were no longer going to be a fighting force. There was a lot of rejigging and reassigning people and patching things together to turn it into a functional unit after day one of the Somme.
Oh yeah, that happened to my grandfather's battalion. Yeah, it basically ended up, what did I say, 110 or something back.
Yeah.
I mean that's not a battalion anymore. It's
No.
like a company.
Yeah. I actually have a link for what was it? Yes. I have a link for the King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry. Actions in history. If you want to have a look at that.
Sure. Yeah, why not?
Let's see. Right. Right. Accept the cookies. I'm going to zoom that in. Zoom it in again. Go to StreamYards. Share the screen. Share the screen.
Is this regarding the casualties?
No, this is regarding the formation of the unit.
Oh, okay, right.
Sure. Just checking how this is looking. Right, that's okay. You probably can't read this.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can see that.
The regiment was officially formed in 1881. The 51st and 101st regiments of the Foot were amalgamated as part of Childers Reform. However, the regiment can trace its history back a further 126 years prior to the state.
Just to say something there, if you scroll up again.
Yep.
I have my grandfather's plaque on the fireplace above the. Sorry, not the fireplace. The kitchen
mantle
in front of me.
Yep.
Yeah. And it is absolutely that. It's just like French twisted horn with the. That's the white rose of Yorkshire and the crown above it.
Yeah.
And underneath it says KO Yorkshire Infantry, whatever.
Yeah.
But no, interesting to see that. Yeah.
Yep. The 51st was raised in 1755 by Charles Washington Wortham, the Marquis of Rockingham, as the 53rd Regiment of Foot. It was retitled the 51st 2 years later and saw first service during the 7 Years' War. fighting at the Battle of Maiden. The next 10 years involved garrison duties in Ireland and Morocco.
Oh,
So,
I wonder what that was about.
yeah, I wouldn't have a clue. Nah, there's quite a lot here, so I was going to scroll down to. So, this is where. Let's see, and that's 1968.
68. Yeah, maybe.
No,
Yeah, go down. Yeah, World War One. There you go. Boom.
yep. Right, 1st Battalion, 2nd Battalion, 3rd, 1st and 4th, 1st and 5th, 2nd and 4th, 2nd and 5th, 3rd, 4th, 3rd, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th.
8. There we go.
Yep.
Pontefract. Yeah.
Yep. September 1914 formed at Pontefract as part of the 3rd New Army, K3, and was moved to Fresham to join the 70th Brigade and the 23rd Division.
Right, that's interesting because, that was part of the Kitchener's New Army.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it was a PALS battalion as such, but it was a new battalion within the regiment.
Yeah. It's not the PALs were something sort of different again. This is taking existing regiments and forming them together into different battalions.
Yeah, a bit like territorial force.
February 1915 moved to Hythe and then on to Bondon. August 1915 mobilised for war, landed in France. 18th to the 10th, 1915 transferred to 70 Brigade.
Yeah, I think, did I mention that earlier? It was 70th Brigade,
Yep. Of the 8th Division engaged in various actions in the Western Front, including 1916 Battle of Albert, which is the Battle of Somme. That's battle. The battle honour that they gave for the Somme was Albert, or the July 1st anyway. 17th to 7/16 transferred to the 70th Brigade of the 23rd Division.
Oh, well, no, that's interesting. That makes sense because they lost so many men.
Yes,
that they'd have to be transferred.
Yeah, what they've done is they've took the remnants and put them somewhere else to continue on, which again is another thing. I mean, you've done all your training, you moved out to France, and you've got your buddies and whatnot, and they're gone, and you're now being lumped into another bunch of people that have got that same experience of being with their friends that they've made during training and everything, and they're now gone, and they're going to weld these two groups of people together. How many of them do you think want to make close friends? Because I'm guessing none of them, because you're going to have to get used to the friends not being there.
Sorry, making close friends with whom?
Right. You've went over to France and with all the people you've trained with and you know really well. Then you've had your engagement in battle, and most of them are gone. So they take what's left of you and put you with another bunch of people who have had that same experience of losing all their friends.
Oh, okay, I'm with you. Yeah.
Right.
It's a good question. I don't know. I think you might do. I think you might share your experiences. However bad they were, I think you have something in common, at least. Even how terrible it was.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know for sure. 42.
Yeah, it's hard to, but it's a pretty difficult situation. 1917, Battle of Menzies, Battle of Merlin Road, Battle of Pigeon Pollyon Road, First Battle of Passchendaele. I know that our lads were at Passchendaele. Second Battle of Passchendaele. November 17, deployed to Italy to strengthen Italian resistance after recent disaster of the Battle of Corpiado. 1918, fighting on the Asago Plateau, the Battle of Victorio Fanto, including the passage of Pieve and the Battle of Montecano. Yeah, so that's whenever I was sort of looking up everything for that, that's what I come up with.
Well, no, well done. That's it's good of you.
Where are they getting the info from? Billy, that comes from the scroll up to the top. War Forces Records, Unit History, King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry. I will get the link for that put in the description. Yeah. So there you go. Anything else that you want to cover?
Well, me personally?
Yeah.
No, but 42 up. Yeah, I think I've gone through pretty much everything that I'd like to bring up. I mean, I hope it was interesting.
Well, I know it was interesting for me, and the numbers staying the watch have been very consistent. Given the time of night, you always do get one person, two people dropping out and somebody else coming in, but they've been steady. I mean, there's been nothing that has made the numbers dive off a cliff. So yes, it was interesting. And the other thing I will say, it's been great having you on, and you'd be welcome and you'd be welcome to come back on again. I think we could, between the two of us, we could do a bit of digging and find out what happened about the tank battles and come on and talk about that.
Yeah, that could be an interesting one. Yeah, I actually live not far away from the tank museum down in Bovington.
Oh,
so I mean that's obviously probably the first place to start if you want to talk. If you're interested in tank battles, they even have. I think they have the only working Tiger tank in the world, and one day a year they have this thing called Tiger Day where they actually drive it around, and it's a very popular day.
Yeah, that would be.
But sorry, I'm going off on a tangent.
No,
sorry.
No, that's fine. Frank O'Brien says Churchill and the tanks would be interesting. Do you know why they were originally called tanks?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was a code name because they didn't know. They didn't want to call them armored fighting vehicles. So yeah,
they were brought across in massive packing cases, and they were trying to think what they could pretend they were.
Yeah,
and they put tank on it as if it was like a massive water tank or something that was coming over.
Yeah, I did hear that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yep.
Yeah. Look, I don't have an awful lot more to say this evening. It's been a great pleasure being on. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure having you on. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I want to say, come back again another time. Be really interested to do that. And with that, I'm going to let. Do you want me to take you out, or
do you want? No, I can do that. I can do that. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and I'll let you finish off. Okay,
Yep.
goodbye. And bye, chat. And thanks
Yeah.
for the
Yes, the
interesting questions.
chat have been lovely.
Interesting questions and stuff. Yeah,
Yep.
they've been good.
Yep. And
Okay.
all the
Okay.
best.
Well, yep. Goodbye.
Right, good
And
night.
God bless.
Yes, and you. Now, what am I doing now? I'm going to stop that screen. I think we're about ready for something completely different. Hold on. Thanks, Samson. Who won? Eventually, the Allies won. With regards to the Battle of Somme, I think the only people that won were the people that make the coffins. Would be my take on that. And what else was I going to do? I had a couple of other pictures to show you. Yes, it is Linda Hunter. We can see you. What else was I going to do? I had other pictures going to show you. Finder. This is go to recents. Yeah, this is just a picture of something that you see quite commonly around Belfast, or at least a part of Belfast that I live in. And window. Sure. And if I can zoom this in a bit, that's the wrong way. So what you'll get is on a gable wall somewhere, you'll come across you'll come across things like these on the gable wall, and these are quite, well, whenever say recent, in the last 3 or 4 years. And I'm going to take that one away and give you a closer look at what they are. Finder. Share screen. So in this you've got, actually I'm going to zoom that in a little. A central one that you can see here is the one that was in the center of it, which gives you a 36 Ulster Division, and their crescent with the Union Jack, the Harp, and the 9 shamrocks for the 9 counties of Ulster that we were promised for in exchange for our men going off to fight the war for them. And each one of these poppies, it gives you the person's army number, their rank. So rifleman 17435, William Corby, age 45, 5 Pitt Street, 10th Battalion, Royal Irish Rifles. And these plaques go up to remember the people in the local area, in the local streets, that died during the First World War. They're not necessarily going to be the have died on the 1st of July. That would be ridiculous. But these are all, this is one of the memorials that you'll see. As you walk about Belfast, these are quite a common sight. And what was the end result of the Battle of the Somme, and what was the strategic purpose? Land taking, etc. Billy, what they were trying to do was, it was intense trench warfare. So you had a trench of British, trench of Germans, anything from 100 to 500 yards apart. And it was very hard to break through those trenches. And what they were hoping to do was break through all the trenches, get to the open ground behind it, and then rush on uh, and have like a more open warfare. So that was the objective, and that was not reached in that battle. That didn't happen until there was more tanks involved. Is it wrong to feel so bad and so proud at the same time? Mate, that's exactly how I feel. I feel very sad and very proud. Uh, you know, it's hard to get in the perspective. Well, here's the thing, Billy. Uh, what happened was we went to war over 100 years ago on the back of there being a Ulster staying part of the United Kingdom. Uh, Ulster in its current, well, whenever we came back and the Home Rule Ban passed, they drew a line in the map. That line included Antrim, Armagh, Down, Fermanagh, Londonderry, and Tyrone. Cavan, Donegal, and Monaghan were not included. Uh, and the line on the map is where the line on the map is. The Unionist people and the British people that lived there no longer live there. They got pushed north because they had a choice of moving north or down where they stayed. And as much as I don't like where the map and the line, where the line on the map is drawn, I'm also real. I'm also realistic enough to know that my people don't live there anymore. Other people live there, and I can't see what benefit it would serve anybody to try and go in and move the people out that live there now and put people that don't live there now in. There's no fucking point yet. Uh, you don't have to like where the line on the map is, but you need to be realistic, and that's where that's how the situation is, and deal with it and get on with your life. If feel proud of the soldierly conduct of the folk, while understanding the whole thing was a goddamn tragedy. Stephen Campbell, you put that very well. That's exactly where we're at with that. There's the one I was looking for. My granddad, Pop, left Australia in 1915 and returned in 1920 after parading through Paris. At the end, Farrier Sergeant, a blacksmith shop on the High Street, Stewart Road, skids after the war. Yeah, excellent, Linda. Uh, right. This has all been a bit deep, and I think we need something to lift the spirits. So it's time for a silly sport. And by God, have I got a silly sport. This is good. You're going to like this. If I can just find this. Billy, not that I know of. There is the movie 1916, I think it's called, which is about the First World War. It's not a historically accurate movie. It's not yeah, 1912 or something. I can't remember what the name of it is. The name of the movie's a year anyway. It does give you some idea about trench fighting and what it would look like, but it's not accurate, to say the least. That's the only recent one I know. There's been quite a few. There's All Quiet on the Western Front. But as for one about the Somme in particular, not that I know of. Nah. StreamYards. Share screen. Share screen. Okay, here we go. Eyes down and again. It's diving, people, but not as you know it.
25 years old, Frederick. Let's see what you have in store for us.
Lots of speed. Sideways.
A bit of a sideways flip there, huh?
Sideways curled up flip cannonball out into an outstretch. I mean, I'm making up terminology as we go along here, but I love the fact that he just stretched out at the end there. And that's a pretty straight line. Closes late.
Closes late, but is lucky to hit the water straight on.
Anybody fancy a go at that crazy diving, Malarkey? I'm going to show another one as well. It's it's absolute madness.
Happy. I mean,
as
long as he's happy, I'm happy.
Wow, second place.
86
like
points.
86 points.
But this guy is the one to look out for. Ram Kamchur. Forced to be reckoned with.
17 years old.
I wonder what happened to his knee. You know? Oh my! You see, this is the diver in him.
Beautiful.
That's the diver in him popping out.
Look at that speed. Oh, wow. You know, in diving, the aim is to have as little splash as possible. In Duts, it's really the opposite, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, but the point is, I mean, we want it to be a little rugged. We don't want it too clean and too nice.
Not too polished.
But he's going to score high with the jumpers, of course.
Look at that. I love it. 3 9s in a row.
Going to do one more, and then we'll take it off the diving.
And there are mostly Norwegians part of this. They are crazy.
They are crazy. Look at that crowd. Wow.
Arne Halbrand, I want to say, made a big splash last year as well. I mean, I've already used that pun, and I'm fully aware of it. But that's just a way to, I mean...
You know, 4th place last year.
Exactly. I mean, he was all the way at the top.
Certainly has something to improve this year.
Well, these guys, I don't think they do anything else during summer than just go around and basically impress girls all around the country.
It looks like it. Look at that confidence. Oh.
Did you see how far he jumped, though? That is a lot of energy out of the.
Not a lot of people go out from the right side.
Because the judges are to the left. A little bit at the point.
He looked at the judges for a split second there.
He jumped right, but pointed to the left.
Hva syns du sjøl? Jo, det var deilig, da. Ja, stemmer. Nei, det var god stemning.
Where was that? I seen her. I saw a chassis competition somewhere the other day. Adult man. Oh, Linda, I've got that, but I'm saving it for next week. Tag, competitive tag. Yes, we've got that. Rory, seen your comment there. First Day of the Somme by Martin Millsborough. Worth a read. Yes, I think we'll be getting that, chum. So that's us with our diving. I think I'm going to pretty much wrap this up. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. We've done 2 hours 11 minutes. Billy, what do you want? Are you wanting more diving? Is that what as you're after, or are you just No, that's the one I want. The Billy Bugs. Yeah, pure raging. What are you raging about? All right, you didn't realize it was that time. Yeah, see, time flies whenever you're enjoying yourself and you've got a good conversation going. I like that comment. Just missing a broomstick. Yep. That sounds about right. Now, I'm going to find us some music to play out, and I've got something fitting, I believe. If I can just. Yep. Go mess. And take that one out. Add this one in. Right, go to StreamYard. Here we go. Right, I'm going to stick this on and play us out. I'm going to stick some comments up in the stream. And thank you all for being here. Really good conversation. Really appreciate the chat coming in and your comments. You've all been lovely and very supportive. Thank you very much. And hopefully see you all next week. All right. Here we go. I'm
Private Bird is a funny little hunter with a smile, a funny smile. Like Ethan, he's an awful little hunter with a smile, a funny smile. The short coat, he'll have his little coat, he can't be so fresh. All the other fellas have to grin when he gets his horse's dress. Hey! Pack all your troubles in your old keep bag and smile, smile, smile. While you will Lucifer tonight, you'll bang, smile, boys, and smile. What were you for worrying? It never was worthwhile. Go pack all your troubles in your own kit bag and smile, smile, smile. Pack all your troubles in your own kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you're a Lucifer tonight, you'll bang, smile, boys, and smile. What were you for worrying? It never was worthwhile. Go pack all your troubles in your own kit bag and smile, smile, smile. Private Bird went a-marching into Flanders with his smile, his funny smile. He was loved by the private and commander for his smile, his funny smile. When a bunch of soldiers came along with a mighty string, but yelled on this little bunch is mine, keep your head down, boys, and sing. Hey! Pack all your troubles in your own kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you were looking for tonight, your bag, smile, boys, and smile. What were you for worrying? It never was worthwhile. Go pack all your troubles in your own kit bag and smile, smile, smile.
All right, people, thank you all very much for coming. I hope you all enjoyed. It was a really good stream. And say thank you, and that's me out of here. Good night, and God bless. There, end broadcast. Ending, warning, ending.